So I wanted to do just a quick rundown of my post-processing workflow for my wet plate images. I know some wet plate artists digitize their plates with a digital camera and a copy stand setup. I've tried that, wasn't real happy with the results, and it was a lot of work to do it well. I found that I get better results quicker by scanning the plates before varnishing. So I have two scanners, one that I have set up on my home workstation, and that's this one that we're looking at here. That's the Epson Perfection V550. And then for pop-ups on location, I have a second smaller scanner, the Canoscan LIDE 400, which is about the size of my laptop. It's really handy. It's USB bus powered, so plugging it into the computer provides the power to run it, as opposed to having to have a separate AC brick that I have to figure out how to plug in somewhere. So it's really convenient on location. In particular, with the Canon scanner, with the Canon Scan software that comes with it, I have it set up for scanning photos. If we go to the settings here, this is the Canon Scan app. We go to Photo Scan. The way I have it configured is to scan at the highest resolution possible, scan it as a color photograph, and have it go directly to a folder that I've created on my external hard drive called Wet Plate Watched Folder. And this comes into play later in Adobe Lightroom. I have a watch folder set up in Lightroom. The idea being that when the contents of this folder changes, so in other words, when I scan an image and it gets added to that folder, Lightroom watches that folder and immediately imports any images that are added to that folder. And so they show up in Lightroom without me having to go through the whole import process in Lightroom manually. So it's a pretty convenient workflow. On location, all I have to do basically is scan it, and then a moment later, well, it's not a moment, it takes a little bit of time, but it shows up in Lightroom automatically, ready for me to crop and make any adjustments that I need to. So that's a pretty convenient workflow for working on location. But once it's into Adobe Lightroom, then this is kind of what the typical plate looks like. It doesn't look quite like the original plate. I've never figured out a way to get a really truly accurate scan of the plate. They always tend to have a little bit of a color cast and such. But this is a scan straight from the scanner. And I've opened it up into Photoshop so that you can see the kind of work that I do on it in Photoshop. Now this is actually a pretty clean plate, but there are a few spots, the typical artifacts of the wet plate process. I will clean those up in the scanned image. They're on the original plate, of course, but I will clean them up on the scanned image. Now, one thing that I have found really useful, this plate isn't too bad as far as like little dust bits and things, but I have a plug-in for Photoshop it's a filter actually from LaserSoft Imaging called SRDX, and it's an AI-powered dust and spot remover. The way I use this is since it's a filter, we'll first convert the layer that I'm going to apply it to a smart filter, and I'll show you why in just a moment. Then we run the filter, so filter LaserSoft SRDX. And what this does, there's a variety of settings. It just kind of remembers the last settings here, but all these little red speckles and things are dust spots, in theory, that the software is going to try and remove and blend. It doesn't get everything. Sometimes it gets too much, and this is why I do it on a smart object layer. So I'm just going to go ahead and say OK to this. Won't go into the details really how to use the SRDX, how to dial it in. But you can see here, if we, let's see, we're at 100%. If we turn that filter on and off, you can see that it's actually, if you look like in this area of Jack's hat, you can see where it's picked up. There's the original, and there's with the filter applied. And you can also see it over here in the background area. I'll turn it off again. You can see some spots up here. But it tends to take out some detail that I want to retain. So this is why I do it as a smart object. When you apply a filter to a smart object layer in Photoshop, that filter is applied with a mask for the filter specifically. So with that mask being white, the filter is being applied everywhere you see the mask as white. So right now it's being applied to the entire image. But if I choose my brush tool and set my foreground color to black, I've got 100%. I'm going to just choose a small round brush, 100% opacity and flow. And I'm going to go back and in the areas where I don't want this filter to be applied, I'm going to paint on that mask with a black brush. So for example, the details in the skull, I'm going to paint over that area. It may not be real obvious in this image, but where I'm painting on this mask with black, there you just saw Jack's ring reappear. Let me zoom in on that. Let me undo that here. You can see that the filter kind of took away some of the detail in his ring. So as I paint back over that area in black, it brings back, or basically hides the effect of that filter. So I will generally go over areas where I have detail like that I want to retain. It does take care of the spots, the dust spots really well. Let me make a little bigger brush here. But I do find, like for hair detail, clothing detail, things like that, the filter can also obscure some of that. So I want to recover all of that. And I'm not going to go through the whole image and do that, but you get the idea. So I can kind of paint back. You can see here, if I show the areas that I've painted, those are areas where I've painted back on the mask to recover detail in clothing and hair and eyes and features and skin and things like that. The foreground here, all this texture of the plants and the rocks and the bag and all that good stuff that I want. I don't want to lose that, so I'm going to paint back over all of that with black to hide the effect of the filter. Now there are some weird artifacts here. I don't know what caused those, something funky with the process, as we all know. So I'm going to go ahead and spot those out. Real easy to do in Photoshop. I'm going to add a new blank layer here and then work with, in this case, I can just use the spot healing brush in Photoshop. Really simple. Just work with it on a separate layer in case I want to undo it. So we'll make sure that we're set to sample all layers. Let's just name that layer. There we go. And then I'm just going to click on those spots. There's a few of them here. And if there are any dust spots that the SRDX filter missed, I can go ahead and touch them up here. Sometimes it doesn't get everything. Let's see, actually it looks pretty good. And just because I'm a little obsessive about this kind of stuff, I may also, as I do with digital images, take out obstructions. In this case, I've got this pole. Some people might not bother them, but it does me, so I'm going to take out that pole. I'm actually going to do it, though, using Photoshop's new AI-powered remove tool, which actually will do a little better job, probably, of getting rid of this stuff without leaving behind any kind of weird little artifacts. So, see how that works. Yep, there we go. And look at it at 100%. Yeah, there we go. Oops, there's another little spot down there in the background. There's I don't know what the black marks were on this. I've never seen those before, but anyway, kind of going around and cleaning up little things that I can digitally. Of course, they're there on the original plate, and that's part of the beauty, that wabi-sabi aspect of the plate. But that's done. I'm going to go ahead and close this, and because I opened it from Lightroom, it will drop right back into Lightroom, the edited version. There we go. So we can see here, all of the top is the obstructions in the background, distractions in the background are gone, the spots are gone, all that sort of thing. So I've got a nice clean plate to begin with here. For the sake of continuity in my galleries, I like my plates to look more or less the same tone-wise. So I have a preset that I've configured that works pretty well. I may have to tweak it a little bit on an individual basis, called Wet Plate Finishing. And I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and you can see as I hover over it, here's the original scan, and here's the scan with the Wet Plate Finishing preset. Now, a preset, if you're not familiar with Lightroom, a preset is basically just a saved combination of settings here in the Develop module. In this case, the preset consists of converting the image to black and white. So here we go. That's the color. Converts it to black and white. and then adds just a teeny tiny bit of clarity. What clarity does in this case is, let me take it to 100% here. What clarity does, if I disable it, is just adds a tiny bit of contrast. Tiny bit of contrast. And I don't want it to push it too far. I don't want it to look, too overdone. But just a tiny little bit of contrast, especially in the mid-tone tonal values. And there's a lot of that in this image. So that helps a lot with this. The other aspect then is of the preset is color grading. So here's the plate without any color grading, and there it is with the color grade applied. So the color grade in this particular case is just an overall slight warmish yellowish tone. Okay, so here again you can see if I disable, that's the just neutral black and white, having converted from the original scan to black and white, and then this is with the slight warm tone applied to it. So by doing that preset to all of my plates, they all at least have the same basic tone, which is good. Because as we know, sometimes you get some plates that are cooler, some that are warmer. This kind of helps to unify that look for my portfolio, I guess. The last bit, of course, is cropping. So here in Lightroom, I will use the crop tool to crop it to the original borders and to straighten it, because it's not always, straight on the scanner when I scan them. So there we go. Yeah, that looks right. And then it's ready to export for social media. I have a preset set up for export that creates a size that's optimized for social media, and then also applies my little watermark here at the bottom right. Sort of, hopefully not too obtrusive, but it's a watermark, so if people see it and they go, where can I have that done? They know how to find me. That's for me the purpose of a watermark. Just branding and marketing. Anyway, that's my process, and it works pretty well. I've got it down to where it goes, fairly quickly and smoothly. And the cleaner the original plate, the easier that is. As we all know, sometimes chemistry goes wonky, and you got a lot of little spots and freckles and things that need some work. What do we call it? The measles, I guess. If you don't fix it right, or you don't wash it long enough, or your silver's dirty, or whatever it is. So some plates do require a little more work than others, but that's the basic workflow. So Adobe Lightroom is a starting point for the scanned image. Take it into Photoshop, make it a smart object, apply the SRDX AI-powered dust and spot remover to a smart object, so that I can then go and refine where that spot removal takes place and recover the details that I need, and then back to Lightroom for finishing touches and cropping and straightening. That's it.